Jake here for American Trucks, and today I'm taking a look at the MotoFab 3-inch front leveling kit for 2006 and newer four-wheel drive Ram 1500s without air ride and excluding the Mega Cab models. If you're planning to add some larger wheels and tires, or even if you just want to eliminate the rake from the stance of your Ram 1500 while still maintaining that factory ride quality, then a kit like this one from MotoFab is going to be just the ticket. This is solidly built, simple to install, and it comes in at a very affordable price. As with most pickups, Rams come from the factory with a bit of a forward rake to them, so the front end tends to sit a bit lower than the rear. Now that's kind of cool if you like that old school muscle car look, but if you're looking to do any kind of off-roading, or if you just want to add some more clearance for larger wheels and tires without going a whole hog on a full lift kit, something like this might just be the right option for you. Now, raising that front end is going to result in a better approach angle and better overall ground clearance. It may not be a whole lot, but overall it is going to make a pretty big difference. So what we're looking at here is a pair of spacers. Now these are going to insert at the top of your struts. It's going to give you 3 inches of additional height in the front suspension, so that'll end up leveling out the stance of the truck. Now installing these is going to allow you to run up to 33-inch tires, as you can see on our truck here. Going any larger than that tire-wise is going to require you to make some modifications, or you might run into some clearance issues. Now the spacers themselves measure just under 2 inches in physical height, but it's important to remember that this is not a 1-to-1 ratio, so you're still going to get that full 3 inches of lift up front. And since these just go right on top of your struts, there's no need to mess around with springs or a spring compressor either. Spacers are a pretty simple thing, but it's very important that they are done right. And these are made from CNC machined billet aluminum, and they've been finished in this textured black powder coat to keep everything protected from rust and corrosion. Unlike something like a polyurethane spacer, these metal ones are less likely to wear out, and they're going to better stand up to abuse. Also good news if you plan to take your truck off-road, because that just means that they're going to stand up to whatever you can throw at it. As far as pricing is concerned, this kit is going to come in at just about $100, which I think is a really good value. Anything that adds a functional element to your vehicle for $100 or less is well worth it in my opinion, and these are going to make an improvement in the look and capabilities of your truck without all that much sacrifice. As a matter of fact, the only sacrifice you're going to have to make is some time. Coming in at a 2 out of 3 on our difficulty meter, this is a job that you can accomplish at home in around 2 hours. Now it is going to require moving some bits out of the wheel well to gain access to the front struts to pull them out, but it is overall not a hard process. Just remember that once you've got everything bolted back together, you should plan on getting an alignment done, because you are going to be changing around the suspension geometry by adding these guys in. So with that, let's head over to the install bay right now, and we'll show you how to get these installed on your Ram.
Tools required for this install include a couple different size impact guns, a hammer, a clip remover tool, 16, 17, and 21 millimeter ratcheting wrenches, a 15/16 wrench, a hook, 13 and 21 millimeter swivel sockets, an 8 millimeter Allen socket, 16, 18, and 21 millimeter sockets, a pry bar, and pole jacks or jack stands. What's up guys? Today we're installing a leveling kit on our Ram, so let's get started.
So our first step is to remove a 13 millimeter bolt holding our brake line in to get a little more slack on that, as well as pop our ABS line out of some clips. So we can grab our 13 millimeter socket to remove this bolt holding our brake line in place. And then we can grab a clip remover tool to pop out the clip in our upper control arm, holding our ABS line in place. And then we can pop our ABS line out of the clip that's attached to our brake line. Now on the back side of our knuckle, we have this S-clip that has a grommet on our ABS line that we can pop out of place. Next, we can disconnect our tie rod end. We have a 21 millimeter nut that we can take a 21 millimeter socket to loosen up. Now once we have our nut loosened up, we can take a hammer and smack the side of the knuckle to pop our ball joint free. And then we can thread the rest of our nut off and throw it back on so that we don't lose it. Next, if we come to the bottom side of our lower control arm, we have an 18 millimeter nut holding our sway bar end link into place. So we'll grab an 18 millimeter socket to take that off. Now you're gonna wanna do that same thing on the other side to make it easy to pop your sway bar out of place. Now with our sway bar end link unbolted on both sides, we can grab a pry bar to get our sway bar end links out of our lower control arm. Next we can disconnect our upper control arm ball joint. So I've got a 21 millimeter ratcheting wrench to loosen up our nut, and then we'll do the same thing as the tie rod and hit it with a hammer. And then once we have that loose, we'll give the knuckle a couple smacks with a hammer to pop our ball joint free. And then we can pull down on our upper control arm and loosen up our nut. Next we can loosen up our lower strut bolt. I have a 15/16 wrench for our nut side and a 21 millimeter socket for our nut side to loosen this up. And to get the bolt the rest of the way out, I'm just gonna grab a wrench on the flat side of the bolt and pull backwards while loosening it up with a 21 millimeter socket. Next, we can remove the 3 nuts at the top of our strut. Now I like to start with the back since they're a little harder to get to. And once you get them loose, you can just spin them the rest of the way off. I'm using a 16 millimeter ratcheting wrench to remove these nuts. So now we're ready to remove our strut. So you're gonna wanna grab a buddy to grab a pry bar and pry down on the lower control arm so we can get the bottom strut mount over the lower control arm. So now that we have our factory strut removed from the truck, we can assemble our spacer and get it installed onto our strut. We have these 3 threaded holes that we're gonna be installing our Allen bolts into. We're gonna install them in the deep well side with an 8 millimeter Allen bit, and then we can tighten those down and get that installed onto our strut and install our 3 factory nuts to secure it down. So now we'll grab our 8 millimeter Allen socket with our bolt and we can thread these in. Then we'll grab our impact gun to tighten these down. So now we can slide our spacer onto our studs on the strut. Now there's only one way this can go on, so you don't have to worry about putting it on sideways or backwards. And then we'll take our 3 factory nuts and put them in a 16 millimeter socket and thread those on. And then we'll throw that socket on our impact gun to tighten them the rest of the way down. And now once we have one strut fully assembled, we can do the same thing for our other one and get these back in the truck. So now that we have our spacer installed onto our strut, we're ready to get this back into the truck. I've got a buddy with a pry bar to pry down on our lower control arm so that we can get our bottom mount over our arm and get it in place. And now we can go up top and install our new nuts. So now comes the fun part of getting our lower strut bolt in place. I've got a pole jack on our lower control arm to lift up on it. You can also use a floor jack if you're working on the ground. We'll get our bolt started and then give it a couple taps. So now once you get this most of the way through, you can just drive it the rest of the way with a hammer. Now we can reinstall our nut on the other side of our lower strut bolt, and then take our 21mm socket and 15/16 wrench to tighten that down. Now once we have our lower strut bolt tightened down, we can go back up top and tighten down our 3 17mm nuts. So I've got a 17mm ratcheting wrench to do so. Next, we can reconnect our upper control arm ball joint. I've got our nut. I've got our pull jack raised up to lift the lower control arm so that we can connect our knuckle to the ball joint. Now we can take our 21mm ratcheting wrench to tighten down our ball joint nut. Next, we can reinstall our tie rod end into the knuckle. And install our nut on the other side. And then take our 21mm socket to tighten it down. Next, we can reinstall the bolt in our brake line bracket. And take a 13mm socket to tighten it down. Now for our ABS line, instead of reconnecting the clip into our upper control arm, we're just gonna connect it to the clip on our brake line. And this way we still have some slack on our cord. And now lastly, we can reconnect our ABS line into that S-clip. Now at this point, you can repeat that whole process on the other side, and then all we'll have left is our sway bar, which we'll put into our lower control arm, both sides at the same time. So now we can line up our sway bar end links with the lower control arm. You might want to have a buddy on the other side, or you're just going to have to make a bunch of trips back and forth. And then once you have it started, you can take your pry bar, pry down on the sway bar, and get your end links in. And then we'll reinstall that 18mm nut and take our 18mm socket to tighten it down. And then we'll do that same thing on the other side. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the MotoFab 3-inch front leveling kit for your 2006 and newer four-wheel drive Ram 1500 without air ride and excluding the Mega Cab. Thank you for watching, and for all things Ram, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.